Hey, and welcome to The Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Let's go over to Wisconsin.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's go over to Wisconsin. Let's talk through the Badgers. Wisconsin felt like a disappointment to me last year.
That's right.
You know, they're another team that I think falls into the category of wanting to, or at least fans wanting to see a little bit more innovation on offense, something different, something that kind of goes beyond the norm as we've come to expect it in Madison. I think we talked about it on the podcast last year, right? Like at some point, Paul Chryst has to adapt this. He has to change this if he wants to get this team any better. The defense always plays to a pretty high level, but they've definitely been lacking to some extent, at least at the quarterback position, maybe since Russell Wilson left. You know, it's been a while since they had a true difference maker at that quarterback spot. They were fine at running back. They're always fine at running back, though it took them a little bit to find their guy.
Mm-hmm. Chaz Malusi got hurt, yeah.
Yeah, what does 2022 look like specifically on that offensive side for Wisconsin?
To go back to Danny Ocean, they're in. Wisconsin is in on trying to pivot and evolve. They hire a new offensive coordinator in Bobby Engram. They hit the portal for, both corner and receiver, but they seem to be more proactive in knowing what they have to fix. They didn't win a Power 5 game until October 9th last year, Ty.
Yep.
October 9th was their first Power 5 win. You remember the extremely slow start against Penn State and Michigan and Notre Dame. So essentially what they're trying to do is recognize that they've not wasted excellent running backs, but weren't able to build around that kind of running back and offensive line performance in the way that perhaps stronger teams generally are able to do. And so they are, whether it's trying to develop that, winter wonder, Quintez Cephas seems to be like an island. They've always had the good tight ends. They'll have a good tight end this year. The question really just is, how are they making defenses pay for putting 8-9 dudes in the box? And is Bobby Engram that guy? And he has experience with Paul Chryst, but is he that guy to get more creative on offense with the run game, to get more creative on offense with, and I'm not saying shots, you got to have dudes going downfield that are threats to really feel good about taking those shots, but to be creative in the intermediate game. Because at this point, I'm not saying Graham Mertz is what he is, but he needs the makeup. He needs the lipstick. He needs the polish to be the best possible version of Graham Mertz as possible. And I don't think we got that. We saw spurts. We saw a couple of instances where you're like, oh, that was an interesting, really strong throw that seemed unusual for Graham Mertz. We need that more often. We need that 5 times more often for Wisconsin. So they lose a number of key contributors on defense, namely at linebacker. Jack Sanborn was great, but they're going to be strong at linebacker again. They'll be strong in the secondary, although they had to dip into the portal a little bit for secondary help. They're going to be good. I think Jim Leonard is probably one of the best 8 defensive coordinators in the country, something like that, when you see the consistent results. But they have that problem up front of not having, look, it's easy to say like J.J. Watt or something like that. Like that's just a dude situation on both sides of the ball. I think Braylon Allen can be. I think a couple of these linebackers can be. But the Wisconsin story is one of just like consistency, good development. But when push comes to shove against Notre Dame or Michigan or Penn State or whoever, Ohio State, that they just don't have the guys. And so the appeal is defense and Braylon Allen. It's nothing crazy. And the appeal is the glimmer of hope that Bobby Engram can be their own version of Danny Ocean or one of the crew members at the heist.
Well, and what's so interesting about the Ocean's 11 comp is that at least for the first 2 teams that we described, I don't know, maybe it'll change as we get a little bit deeper into this. I can't think of 2 teams that are less Ocean's 11. Okay. Ocean's 11, a movie built around a convoluted plot. Everything has to go just so. It's complicated. It takes the right crew. It takes the right timing, practice. It was so complicated. It's very straightforward for both of these teams, isn't it? I mean, we're going to play defense. We're going to bash your brains in with defense.
So they're the demolition experts. They're Basher from Ocean's 11.
It's whatever we can get out of our offense, I think, is ultimately what defines the level of success, not just for Iowa, but also for Oklahoma. Not just for, how did I say Oklahoma?
Yeah, it's okay.
Not just for Iowa, but also for Wisconsin.
Yeah, they're trying to do similar things with similar questions at quarterback, but Wisconsin at least seems to be more proactive in terms of getting into the vault of respectable offense.
Yeah. Is the line okay? The
Wisconsin?
offensive line, still okay?
Yeah, Wisconsin's line should be good. They made the change at offensive line coach. Joe Rudolph, I believe is with Virginia Tech in like a co-coordinator role. So a little bit of change there, a little bit of shuffling position-wise, but it appears to be once again a strength.
Okay. Well, we'll have to keep our eyes on Braylon Allen. Braylon Allen had a great breakout campaign last season, almost 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns. Big kid, really big kid, 6.8 per carry. And he really was kind of the focal point of that offense because Graham Mertz, if you look at his numbers, I mean, won't go too deep into the stats here, but 10 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, completion percentage under 60%, just a shade under 60%. A far cry from the promise of Graham Mertz back in the day when he threw 5 touchdowns against Illinois. I always come back to that first game, of
course,
because we thought after that he was going to be the heir apparent, but
you were seduced.
I was seduced. Hasn't quite worked out to that extreme.
Yeah, and it's okay. And I think the big thing with Wisconsin as well is if they're not able to find that winter wonder, if they're not able to go downfield a ton, is who are the fresh legs in the backfield? When we looked at the best of Wisconsin's offense, it's not just about that lead guy, but it's about the second guy. It's about the third guy. So if it is Ches Malusi, whoever it is, if Wisconsin's coming at you with fresh legs, they become an even bigger nightmare. Especially, I know they have Ohio State early on this schedule. They have Wazoo, and Cameron Ward at quarterback.
Ward,
they are, I think they host Wazoo though, so at least that's at Camp Randall. And they're decent buffers, really. There's not a lot of meaty middles or back-to-backs that are scary.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
It ends tough. It ends tough at Iowa, at Nebraska, and Minnesota. But I don't know. Wisconsin is just, you can kind of set your watch to them showing up against lesser opponents.
I'm curious about this stretch of games kind of in the middle here. At Ohio State, next week, home against Illinois. I could see that being a letdown game.
Okay.
Illinois will be plucky. Well, you could tell me how plucky, but I think Illinois is going to be plucky. At Northwestern, forget it. I'm not worried about that game. And then at Michigan State. I could see that being a rough stretch because I'm pretty high on Ohio State, as you know.
Of course.
And I also feel like Michigan State's going to be in a better spot defensively than they were a year ago. So to me, that stretch is not super easy either.
I hear you, but you're including Ryan Helinski and Tommy DeVito as key components of that stretch? Like, what are we talking about? Throwing into it what I think is going to be another, and there are new faces in the back end, I hear you, on the Wisconsin defense, but still, I don't know. Illinois with a new offensive coordinator and a Syracuse quarterback transfer, who I think is fine, and he had a good spring, and we'll get there. And a recent historically awful Northwestern offense. Like, I don't know. You're going to have to do more to convince me that that's an actual stretch rather than not just like filler between games.